You're listening to Mimir, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs, with me, your host, Maddie Kelly. Each week, I dive deep in my interviews with successful founders to leave you with the tools necessary to build your dream lives. So get ready for some kick-ass advice. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. This week, we are talking about one of the most important parts of starting a business, which is how to make it financially sustainable from day one. Managing your money as an entrepreneur isn't just about making sales, it's about ensuring you can actually keep the money you earn. And this struggle is real for early founders, which is why I'm sitting down with Phil McGilvray. He is on a mission to help business owners get their finances in order using principles that are simple and effective. From his early days learning to budget with physical cash jars from his grandma to becoming a financial advisor for high net worth individuals, Phil has seen firsthand why so many entrepreneurs struggle with financial sustainability. In this episode, he's going to share a straightforward 5-number framework to track your business health, how to get out of the feast-or-famine cycle, and why paying yourself from day one is a non-negotiable for long-term success. In addition, you guys are also going to learn how to price your products and services to actually make a profit, not just cover costs, the biggest money mistakes entrepreneurs make and how to avoid them, and the power of a cash cascade and how to build financial stability into your business from day one. Midway through, Phil and I dive into one of the hardest parts of entrepreneurship, which is charging what you're worth. It sounds simple and everybody talks about it, but when you're the one setting the price, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and fear of rejection creep in. I get real about my own struggles, have second-guessed my value, worrying about turning people away, and I've had to reframe my mindset around pricing. So if you've ever felt uncomfortable naming your price or wondered if you're charging too much or too little, this conversation is for you. This episode made me sit back and personally reevaluate a lot about how I was running the business. You're going to hear me get incredibly honest and vulnerable. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by your business finances, or if you've ever put off tracking your numbers because honestly it's easier not to look, this conversation will change how you think about your money and your business. It will help you see the simplicity of it, and I hope provide you with the inspiration to keep going. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Phil to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Maddie. I'm very excited.
I'm thrilled. To dive right in, I would love if you could share a little bit about your career in finance and how you ended up helping other small business owners.
Sure. Okay, I'll just point. You see the glass jars there behind me?
Yes.
When I was 18, I was over in the UK on my gap year. A gap year sort of, I don't know, you're familiar with that term, gap year?
Yeah, I think it's pretty common where it's like you take like a year off before high school, but or after high school, but before college.
Yeah. So I went to the UK. So I'm in Australia. I went to the UK. My grandma lived over there. I did a year as an adventure training instructor. And my grandma, while I was over there, I was getting paid a princely sum of £15 a week. Nice. I know, but they did provide my food and accommodation, so I can't complain. Best year of my life, but that year over there. But my grandma taught me to budget using physical glass jars and physical money. It was very, very simple. She'd go around to the post office every month. She'd pick up a pension in cash. She'd come home. She'd take down these glass jars from above her stovetop. And she had like a jar for electricity, a jar for gas, a jar for housekeeping, which is things like her clothes and groceries and things. And she knew exactly how much she needed to put into those jars so that when those expenses turned up, the money was just there ready to go. And anything extra she would take the next day down to the bank and would use it to either pay off a home loan or to to put in savings or to invest. And my grandma died actually a very, very wealthy woman simply because she followed that process all her life. And so she taught me how to do that. And when I came home from the UK, I actually spent a lot of time teaching all my friends how to budget. It was something I was really passionate about. It made a big difference to me in the UK. And so at the age of 19, 20, I was teaching 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds how to budget. I was teaching them how to get out of debt, how to save money, et cetera, et cetera.
I think something about this that I really appreciate is like the visibility of it. I think one of the hardest things about doing that today is that it's all like fake money in my mind.
It is.
Because it
Exactly
doesn't
right.
necessarily, it's not cash. It doesn't exist in reality, sort of. And it's all sort of away,
Yeah.
like in the cloud. And so it's very hard to see, but to have physical jars in front of you and like to be physically putting money in the jars every day
Yeah.
or every week is
Yeah.
such an amazing concept. And I feel like it really would solidify the principles.
It did, so that's why I've still got them here, is because this is how I teach my clients. Now, of course, we don't use glass jars, and what happened was over the years, glass jars became envelopes, and then they went from envelopes to a paper budgeting system, and from a paper budgeting system, Excel spreadsheets, and now I have my own like budgeting software and those sorts of things, which I do with my personal clients.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's called Grandma's Jars. But it's basically follows the principles of Grandma's Jars. But the principles, and this is the thing, the principles are super easy to understand, and when you understand how they apply to our online world today, or how you can make them work in our online world, it's very powerful. But sorry, keep going with the story, because what happened then was I eventually became a financial advisor. I had another career in there as an occupational therapist for about 8 years, but I was still doing budgeting and money management and those sorts of things with people in the evenings and on the weekends. And then I eventually got invited to become a financial advisor from someone at our church. And it was really interesting that I became a financial advisor, ultimately became a partner in Australia's leading stockbroker financial planning firm.
Wow.
But they wouldn't let me do budgeting and money management because most financial advising firms can't actually afford to do that. They can't actually afford to help people because they've got compliance and there's things that they have to collect information on from you, and it's just not financially viable for your average financial advisor to teach the basics of finance.
Yeah.
Which is why I got into becoming a financial advisor. And then about 10 years ago, I really felt called to leave my stockbroking financial planning firm. I was earning ridiculous amounts of money, working with a lot of high net worth people, a lot of business owners. My role in the firm was actually as a cash flow specialist. So I would actually analyze businesses and determine which ones were worth investing in, which ones weren't investing in, and so on.
Fascinating.
So had a lot of experience of analyzing businesses at a fundamental level. And but I really felt like the reason I became a financial advisor was to teach the financial basics to people, and I wasn't doing it. I was just helping rich people get richer, and it just didn't gel with me anymore. And so I left that and started teaching the financial basics. But along the way, stepping into that entrepreneurial world, I realized that most entrepreneurs don't know how to manage their finances.
Yeah.
They're really, really good at what they do. It might be that they're really good as a coach, or they're really good selling particular products or courses, but they're really, really poor at managing their money because they don't know how to run a business. So this for me was just like child's play. So I started with the entrepreneurs that I was working with, started helping them manage their finances, get out of debt, and learn how to purposely engineer their business for profitability from day one.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I guess I've been in this sort of realm. I still do a lot of mum and dad, teaching people the basics of finance, budgeting, and get debt reduction. My clients have paid off over $18 million in credit card debt over the last 7 years.
That's not a long time.
No. But it's amazing when you get the principles right, it all starts to work. But really, now I do a lot of work, sort of half my time split between, mums and dads, and then half the time between business owners, and helping them really just understand the basics of finance and what numbers you need to track, what numbers you don't need to track, and really simplifying it because it's not nearly as complicated as people think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, that was a very long answer to your question, but I hope that helps.
No, this was great because this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Yep. I know because I am a co-founder, and obviously I have this podcast, and I'm a person with money. And the irony of being an entrepreneur to me is that you are given all of this responsibility to run a business. You're expected to start it from the ground up. You're expected to file the correct paperwork. You're expected to know how to market it. You're expected to know how to produce your good or service. And then on top of it, you're expected to manage the finances of that. And like somebody like me, I do not have a degree in like literally any of those things. I mean, I have a master's in entrepreneurialism, and that included one finance class that frankly still like trying to wrap my head around. So when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I was like, oh, it's fine. Somebody else will handle the finances. Like I'll just hire somebody. But in that, I got a lot of advice that was like, you really need to know what's going on with your business financially. You really need to be like involved in that. It can't just be something that you put on somebody else. And maybe like as it grows, the more nitty gritty stuff can be handled by somebody else. But in principle, high level, I really need to understand this. And so I feel like I'm very much in the position where I have legitimately no idea how to scale and start a business, like to allow for financial success as early as possible. And I know especially cash flow is important. And this is like something I want to get into later about like how do we ensure cash flow positivity even at the beginning when you're not necessarily like making a buttload of money yet. But even before that, I think I'm just really excited to hear how you walk somebody like me through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good question, and it's really helpful for me because you're saying, someone like me. So we'll assume that we're talking to you and how you do this. So the first thing that we want to do is get absolute clarity on where you stand financially right now. So this means getting clarity on. There's really five numbers, maybe six, depending on what sort of business you've got, but 5 numbers we need to track. And I want to keep this super simple because it is super simple. Unfortunately, the accountants of the world, and not all accountants, but all accountants, they have all these frameworks and they've got to apply to your business. But for you and I as entrepreneurs, most of that is irrelevant. What we need to track is, what was my revenue for the month? That's the first thing. And that's the easy one. We all entrepreneurs, we know what our revenue for the month was. And, that's the number we all brag about. But really, it's actually not irrelevant, but I've worked with 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs who on the outside look like they've got it all together. They've won all these awards for hitting 7 figures, and yet they've got absolutely nothing because they've spent 7 figures to make 7 figures. And so what we want to do is firstly is what is your revenue? The second figure you need to work out is, well, what sort of salary do I need to be paying myself to make it all work? So taking the time to work out what all your personal expenses are. And typically I've got some worksheets, and I'm happy to share these with you. I've got some worksheets that help people identify, well, what are all of my personal expenses? And it's a bit like grandma. She worked out what all her expenses were at the beginning of the year. She divided that by 12, and every month she put that amount aside. And so it's everything. It's not just the bills. It's, well, what do I want to spend on sports and hobbies? What do I spend on gifts? What do I spend on my pets? What do I spend on cats? What do I spend on these sorts of things? Know what they all are, because what you want to do is know, well, what do I need this business to be paying me so that I can say I'm self-sustaining?
That's crazy. This is wild to me because I think a lot of early stage entrepreneurs do not even consider the option of paying themselves.
And you're 100% right. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that we make, is because we keep postponing paying ourselves. And in the meantime, and we see this all the time, is we'll go, okay, well, I'm starting to earn some money, so I'm going to get a VA. I'm starting to earn some money, so I'm going to spend some money on ads. I'm starting to earn some money, so I'm going to invest in a course or a coach, at those sort of things. And all the time, what we're doing is we're basically building up this hurdle of how much we need to earn before we can start paying ourselves. And so before you know it, you need to be earning $15,000 or $20,000 just to pay yourself $5,000 a month. And the problem is that this hurdle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I regularly come across clients that are, earning or bringing in their business, $50,000 a year, and they're still not paying themselves a proper salary. Your business is not sustainable until you are paying yourself a salary. And the reason that you became an entrepreneur was 3 reasons. First one, I wanted to spend my life doing something I believed in and I loved. Second thing is I wanted to be in control of my time. And the third thing is I want to earn more, working for myself than I could working for someone else.
Yes.
And what often happens is we end up in a situation where we're working really long hours, we're still not paying ourselves, and we're starting to resent the business we're in because it's not giving us the things we need. So what you want to do very, very early on is there are always going to be some costs that are essential to you making money. So they need to be the priority. But you then need to work out, well, what is it that I need to pay myself so that this business is actually viable, sustainable, and that I'm here for the long term. And as soon as you can get to that point, you go, okay, I can relax a little bit now. I'm covering my salary. I'm here for, and I can invest my time fully into this.
Yeah.
So what that means is, sorry.
No, I'm just going to say, so basically, it's just what it would take to cover your expenses. It's not some like magical number that you think you should be earning. It's more or less
no,
like, this
no,
is what you need to live.
No. Your first step in this process is to work out, what do I need to make sure that my home life is okay?
Okay.
All my expenses at home are okay. Now, we want to get to the fun income later.
Yeah.
But our first goal is to go, well, because often, people have in their heads, well, I want to pay myself $10,000 a month because it just sounds like a good figure.
Yeah.
It's like, no, well, work out firstly, and this is where it takes some time, work out what you need to be paying yourself, plus a little bit extra. You don't want to be living like a miser. But what is that figure? And then our goal is to try and gradually, as your revenue starts to increase, you've got these core expenses covered that you have to cover with your business. Yeah. And then you want to start paying yourself a salary until you can get to that point where the salary is covering your wage, or your revenue is covering your wage.
Yeah.
And then at that point, we then go, okay, we've got our basic wage covered. Then we can start, that's when we start with the VA, and that's when we start with the ads, and that's when we start with, and so on. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think the most interesting thing about this to me is that I feel like from a purely morale standpoint, this would be game changing, because if you feel like your business is already paying you, it takes so much pressure off, because you're not stressing about when is this going to become viable as a business. Like, it already is. It's already covering your expenses. And then on top of that, you're like, okay, validated that this is working. Now, instead of feeling like you're coming from a place of desperation, you're like, we've got the basics covered. Everything else on top of this is a bonus. So it's a little bit more like exciting, a little bit more motivating, a little bit less stressful, like better vibes all around. And it's just simply the irony, like, I guess it's not irony, because I think we talk about this a lot on the podcast, is that if you're not good, your business isn't good.
That's
and
exactly
in order for you to be good, you have to pay yourself, and you have to just simply, like, it's like any other job, you need to get paid for the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And that allows you to take some of the burden off and then, reinvest into the business as you should be.
Yeah, absolutely, Maddie. You're 100% right. And here's the thing. What often happens is, in the absence of, without paying ourselves a salary, the more money we have sitting in our operating account, in our business operating account, the more things we'll find to spend it on. And often the money in our business account, it's almost like it's monopoly money. We would spend money in our business account far more readily than we would in our personal account. We'd consider it far more carefully in our personal account than our business account. So it's very easy for us to go, I'm going to go buy a new set of ring lights for my computer, or I'm going to invest in a new coach, or I'm going to invest in whatever. Because, in our heads we're saying, it's an investment in the business and it's tax deductible and all those sorts of things. But what happens is that basically robs you of being able to pay yourself a proper salary. And it doesn't matter how much you earn. I see this at every single entrepreneur can go, yeah, that's right. I very easily spend. I'm a bit loosey goosey with the money in my business account, whereas I'm not so much in my personal account.
Yeah.
So if you wait until there seems to be enough money in your account to pay yourself a proper salary, you're probably not going to, because you're going to find something else to spend it on. Yeah. So setting yourself a rule I need to get to that basic salary as quickly as possible will actually mean that you're not wasting as much money in the business.
That makes sense.
Okay. So if numbers again, 5 numbers we really need: your revenue. What is that magic number that you need as a base salary to pay yourself? Then what we need to do is have a look at, what are all your expenses within your business? And this is really eye-opening and a lot of entrepreneurs will just clam up at this and it's like a bit scary. And I would say it's interesting that in the absence of facts, our brain will always err to fear. And then, we start to catastrophize. So it's very, very often I'll meet with entrepreneurs that are a bit scared to look at their numbers because they know it's not great and therefore they just don't do it. But what happens is once you've had a look at them and we've got them all down, then all of a sudden you can go, oh, okay, firstly, probably not as bad as I've been catastrophizing. And secondly, now I can actually see where my money's going and start making some conscious decisions about, am I happy with where my money's going? Are there subscriptions in there that I'm no longer using? Yeah. Has there been a subscription where I signed up for a free trial and I forgot to cancel it now for the last 3 years? They've been charging me, $50 a month.
Yeah.
Going through and having a look at what all your expenses are so that you can clearly see where the money's going. So that's a third thing that I would tell you to do. And what I would suggest you do is go back, perhaps 6 months and go through so you're starting to get a good picture of what your standard, recurring expenses are. What are those other extra things? And ask yourself, did all that, did I need to spend all of that money? Are there places that I can pull back my expenses? Because the leaner we can be, the better.
Right.
And it also then helps us get the big picture because what we then want to do, and I'm missing one. So we've got revenue, we've got your revenue, we've got your income as a salary. We've got your expenses. And then what we can do is we can go, here's my revenue minus my expenses. So don't include salary, minus my expenses. What is actually my profit or loss for the month?
This is the key number.
And that's the key number. And it's interesting when you start to see that number. So everything I've told you to do so far, like every month, this is about a 15-minute process. But what it does, it gives you complete clarity on the progress of your business. You can see, here's my income, my revenue, here's all my expenses. What have I got left at the end of the month? Am I in positive or am I in minus situation there? And then from the fourth number here is working out what your tax would be on that. So, okay, here's my income or my revenue, $10,000. My expenses were $5,000. I've made so we're not including your salary here. I've got $5,000 left over. Of that $5,000, standard tax rate, let's say it's 22%. I take 22% of that $5,000 and I put that aside into a tax account and I don't touch it. And really important.
I didn't know about, so you have a separate bank account just for tax money?
Ideally, yes.
Oh, okay. This is new to me.
Yeah. I can talk to you a bit more about bank accounts in just a moment. But yeah, you should always separate your tax money.
Okay.
Put it aside. Don't just leave it in your savings account because in your savings account, you're still going, oh, well, I've still got some money over here. And it's like, well, actually, remember, half of that's your tax money. If you put it away in a separate account, you go, okay, that is no longer my money. Then your head will tell you that's not my money to touch.
Right.
If you're leaving it in another account, either your operating account or in your savings account, chances are, it sort of becomes a bit wishy-washy as to how much I actually need there.
Got it. Okay.
Is okay. And this can be quite heartbreaking because when you look at you go, oh, here's my income, here's all my expenses. Now I'm putting tax money aside. I'm left with so much less than I thought I had. But that's what you need to do because the worst thing that can happen is you get to the end of financial year, the IRS in your instance comes calling and says, hey, you owe us $9,000. You're going, oh, gosh, I thought I had some good savings there, but now, or I don't even have the money there, which happens all the time.
Right.
But if you put it away as it happens, then you go, okay, no sweat. It's there. It hurts still, but I've had it planned for that all year. And then the last number is, after we've taken that out, is what I call your cash flow profit. So this is then, if you speak to an accountant, he'll often pat people on the back and say, well done you made a profit this year. And you're going, well, great, where is it? Because it's not in my bank account. And that's because when you're looking at a P&L, they don't include things like, depending on how you paid yourself, if you're just owner drawings, it won't tell you your owner drawings. It won't tell you what you've paid in tax. It won't tell you what you've paid on debt repayments. It won't tell you what major equipment purchases are in there. So it means that you're not looking at the full picture. And so what we want to be able to do, and for you particularly, is just make sure you're very clear. Now you'd run it like me, run a fairly simple sort of business, but you just want to be able to see at the bottom what have I got left to keep from this scenario? What is mine to keep? Now, of course, that's the money then that becomes your salary and profit and all those sort of things. But if you just track those 5 numbers, your revenue, ideally what salary am I taking? What are all my business expenses? How much do I need to put aside for profit? And what is actually mine left to keep at the end of the month? I would say start there. If you do that month on month, because then you can start to track, okay, am I going forwards or am I going backwards? And what do I need to do? Like, I've now got the full picture. What do I need to do to make more profit, to make sure there's more at the bottom there? Well, how do I get more of that next month?
Yes. And this is something that I am curious about, because I was talking to somebody else once and they mentioned that like cash flow, profitability, and cash flow in general is something that entrepreneurs should be very particular about. Like, it's something that they should really pay attention to. And it was just sort of like cash flow equals good if you're a small business. And I want to ask you a little bit about this. Like, have you double click into that? And is this true? Is this yes? But I'm also like, how do you do that when you're still trying to get this thing off the ground and you're not necessarily like, you know, running full steam ahead? So I'm just curious, because I'm like, how do you become cash flow positive? If that's even the right word.
No, it is the right word. The first thing that I would say, like the first thing you said, you know, when we're just starting off, the temptation is to go, well, I'm not making any money yet, so I'm not going to track these things.
Yeah.
And I would say to you, that's a huge mistake, because you want to be able to track what's working and what's not working. And so by actually tracking these from day one, like I've got a client at the moment that she's stepping away from, school teaching into like a mentoring, coaching kind of role. And I said to her, you've got to track your numbers from day one, because what this is going to help you understand is, if I'm not making profit at the moment, so here's my income, here's all my expenses, and like you said, there's no cash flow profit at the bottom there. What we've got to ask ourselves is, well, what do I have to do to make more cash flow? And often the mistake people make is going, well, I've just got to sell more. And it's like, well, hang on, it might be selling more, but do you even know that what you're selling at 1 unit is profitable? And if it's not profitable 1 unit, then selling potentially at 10 units isn't going to be profitable either. You're just going to be working a lot harder to make no profit.
Right.
So it is really important that when you go through this process, and I often run a workshop called Pricing for Profit, where I help people work out what they actually need to charge when you go, okay, well, this is what it cost me. This is what I'm selling it at, but this is what it actually cost me to produce this, to work out so that we can purposely engineer your business for profitability. Now, for you, it would be going, okay, well, if we look at what you're doing and what you're selling it for, is it just a matter of selling more, or is it actually a matter of pricing it a little bit more appropriately so that you get more of a return on each thing that you sell? And so having this, I call it a profit snapshot, which is those 5 numbers we've been talking about. Having a profit snapshot is then about going through that and going, well, can I reduce my expenses? Can I be more frugal, lean with my expenses? Most entrepreneurs can. And then what do I need to sell to make sure that I've got all my expenses covered? So like if you've got regular expenses, let's say your regular expenses every month are $2,000 because you've got your podcasting software and your podcasting equipment and so on. You've got a whole bunch of stuff, but there's $2,000 a month for every to run the business.
Yeah.
Then you can go, okay, well, if I sell my product for $500, then I know that I need to sell 4 of those just to break even, just to cover my costs. Is that making sense?
Yep.
So then we can go, well, is it possible for me to sell 5 of these? And you might go, look, it's going to be hard to sell 5, but I could sell 4 at a higher price. So maybe I could sell them at $1,000 instead of $500, which means I've now got $2,000 profit. So as we go through, it's not the big mistake, the big lie that we hear in the entrepreneurial world is just sell more. just sell more. And it's like, well, that's not always easy. It's not always feasible. And if we're selling more, but that more still isn't profitable, then maybe it comes back to our pricing or the way that we actually build this business. So having a profit snapshot, those 5 numbers, is going to help you work your way through that. But to become cash flow positive, it's really just a matter of, can I sell more of what I'm already doing if it's positive, if it's already profitable? Or can I change the pricing so that I can make it more profitable? Can I reduce my expenses so that, again, I can create more cash flow profit at the bottom? They're the 3 really big things. There's other things we can do, other profit levers that we can pull to do that. But you don't know what to do until you can see the numbers every month. And having that profit snapshot will actually help you do that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and it does. And I know for me, so I'm sure somebody else out there listening is like, the hardest part is getting it all down on paper, actually taking the step to go through your bank account and to go through your expenses and to really like think through and see this stuff. It's so much easier to just be like, no, it doesn't exist, and like not really, you know what I mean? Like not really take a look at it. And then once you actually get into it and start looking at it, I think it's a lot easier to tackle. And it just is sort of like, how can we address the elephant in the room, you know?
Yeah. And can I say, and I totally understand that it's easier just not to do it. And you know, Albert Einstein's definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And just this week, I had a discussion with an entrepreneur. He's very, very well known in the entrepreneurial world, very, very successful, at least in theory. Very good at what he does. But 2 or 3 years ago, he was very much, Phil, you know, I'm a visionary entrepreneur, and I don't do the detail, and I don't do them. So I'm going to, you know, outsource my finances to my VA, who she's going to manage all my finances for me, and et cetera, et cetera. And then 3 years later, now we got things set up, but 3 years later down the track, his financial situation hasn't improved because he didn't take ownership of that thing. And he said to me, Phil, in fact, I was on his podcast, and he said to me, Phil, I think I want to share that I've come the full circle. I've realized that I cannot be successful and not take notice of my finance and not understand where I'm at financially, because that affects every day the decisions I'm making regarding my spending, regarding my products and everything. So,
I mean, it determines the product roadmap. It determines, you know, what level of spend you want to have. It determines where you want to be putting in investment and what part of the business, like what priorities matter. And then like all of those things are cogs that have to work towards the same machine. And I think that makes sense to me at that stage. And I think about myself in the stage that I'm in now. And I think the other tricky thing sometimes is feeling comfortable asking for more. I know for me, like, you know, the idea of even charging for the podcast, I'm gonna be so honest right now. Like, there's a few ways that you can monetize a podcast, right? Like ads, sponsorships, Patreon subscriptions, or I've also seen people charge guests for appearances. And this is something I've never wanted to do. It's something I absolutely could do, but it's nothing I've wanted to do because it kind of goes against the ethos of the podcast a little bit. But it's also like, you know, I'm coming to a point now where I'm a year into this and I haven't necessarily found the monetization strategy that I'm into. And I think part of that is because I am uncomfortable to ask and to like start thinking about it from that perspective, as opposed to just really thinking about this and almost like attacking it as sort of my passion and my side hobby, instead of thinking about it as a profit center. And I think that shift comes almost from like an insecurity as a business owner, where you're like, am I good enough?
Yeah. And that's right. And the charging is a really big, and I've been through this, you know, when I first stepped away from my stockbroker financial planning firm and was coaching people, I was charging like $99 a month to do one-to-one coaching with people. And, you know, I just couldn't make it work. Right. Even though I'd been doing it for years and I was really, really good at it, I mean, part of it is I just want to help people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But it's also you've got, and I see this all the time, and the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to charging is they're looking at the time they're putting in, or they're looking at the how many, like for instance, if it was a course, how many videos are in there and how many worksheets are in there and how many times they're jumping on a call live with you and all those sort of things. But what they actually need to do, and what every entrepreneur needs to do, is just think about the value they provide the person at the other end. So you think about, like for me, so many, like you think, as I said to you before, my clients have paid off over $18 million in credit card debt over the past however many years. Some of those people have been stuck in credit card debt cycles for like 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And as soon as we get them on the right path, they're free of that within 6, 12 months. A lot of my clients, I help people. I run a lot of workshops investing, how to get started investing. Now, I know down the track that if they follow the exact process that I recommend and set them up with, they will ultimately be millionaires, in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And so you come back to and going, okay, well, how much is, like, what is the value of what I'm teaching these people or giving these people? And that's what you need to value your product, your service on, is the outcome. And then you just need to get better at selling those outcomes so that people realize the value they're getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's something funny too. When I got into this, it just seemed so simple, to like start a business, charge money for it, cut and dry. But when you really start to get into it, and while the principles are simple, it's like the idea of having to place value on your work and stuff like that, like it's harder than you think it is, because I think it challenges us as people to truly, like, and this is another cliche that people say all the time, is like, know your worth. And it's like, how do you know your worth? Like, how do you ascribe value to that? I think it's a very challenging exercise as a person.
It is. And it's a good exercise to go through, though, because as an entrepreneur, you want to know that you're providing value.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, now you've got a lot of people out there that just, the brosifs out there that want to, drive the Lamborghinis and all those sorts of things. But then you've got people like you and I who are just everyday people that are doing something they love and they want to change the lives of other people. They genuinely want to speak into the lives of other people. And I think, so what you need to come back to is, well, how is what I'm doing helping my audience or helping my clients or helping my customers? How is what I'm doing that? And what outcomes am I helping them achieve? And if you can confidently, and this is especially for when I stepped into the entrepreneurial world, I know that I was helping entrepreneurs who'd been struggling for years to get ahead financially, go from $10,000 a month losses to $10,000 a month profits. I've had clients make hundreds of thousands of dollars differences to their businesses in a year, in 6 months, simply because we put some certain strategies in place to help them get there. And so it's very easy then to go, well, if I'm going to help you make an extra $50,000, $100,000 this year, then paying me $20,000 doesn't seem like such a big thing. Now, that was just an example, of course. Yeah. But I know, like, if I charge people $200 a month to be part of my group, I know that if they follow what I'm going to tell them to do, they're going to be able to make $1,000 more next month, then $2,000, then $3,000, then $4,000. It's going to change their lives. So for you, Maddie, what you've just got to think about, and anyone listening to this, is think about, well, what is the value that I'm providing and how am I helping these people live the life that they want to live?
Yeah. Like what?
Do that. Sorry?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what, information or inspiration or, whatever that is that's actually helping kickstart that gear for them.
Yeah, that's right. And as soon as you do that and you can see that you have this valuable place in the real world where you are changing people's lives, then charging more starts to become a lot easier.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. I just wanted to take a moment to pause and just appreciate this, because I think and I hope it's the same for whoever's listening, is that this is a very real conversation that has genuinely got some great tips in here that I know I'm taking away. And I think it's really helping me address some of the questions that I've had about the business that I haven't. It's funny, you said the hurdle that I have to overcome in order to start paying myself or in order to start making a revenue. Like, that is so true. You build this thing up in your head, especially if it's something that you're building on the side of your full-time job, where you're like, oh, well, I can't take this. It doesn't feel serious, or it doesn't feel like it deserves that return because it doesn't have X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. And a lot of people stay stuck in that sort of place. And I think, and only you can decide. Like, a lot of people, it is just a side hobby and it's just a side hustle and they enjoy it. It's like their what's the word, expression of themselves, and something that they just love doing. But at some point, if it's what you want to do to replace your day job, if you'd love to be doing it full time, then what you've got to think about is, okay, well, what does that look like and how is it helping people? How can I help people? And then when I can work out how I'm changing people's lives, how I'm helping people, then you start to realize that that's valuable. Like, if you can help people get from this side of the river to this side of the river, then you provide that bridge between, then they're going to pay you for that. They're going to want to pay you for that. And I often have in the past, I've had coaches say, "Oh, you just got to charge more," and it's like, yes, I know that perhaps I need to charge more, but it's not that simple. I need to think through, well, why is this worth what I'm charging? And I'm sure this is true for you. That there's this innate. You don't want to be charging more than you're worth. You want to make, like, we hate charging as it is. Like, it's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
Yes. I wouldn't, like, I don't want to, Like, if I could, in a perfect ideal world where I didn't have to pay my rent and I didn't have to buy food or like do all of these things, I wouldn't. I just simply wouldn't. It would just be great to just have this stuff like for free. But that's unfortunately not the reality that we live in. Maybe one day.
No, it's not. But I would also say to understand that people who pay attention. And so that means that when you charge, like, if you want someone to take your information and actually apply it to their lives and have a life-changing outcome because of that, they have to pay for that. Because if they get it for free, they're probably not going to value it. They're probably not going to apply it, and therefore they're not going to get the outcomes they could achieve. So actually charging means that they're coming to you with an intent to go, this is important to me. I'm paying good money for it, so I'm actually going to apply it and get the results that this coaching is promised me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's such a helpful way to think about it. And I want to pivot a little bit. I do have one more question that I want to ask you. And I know a lot of business owners are genuinely like struggling to stay afloat. And I have someone in my life who has a business, and he just is always seeming like in doomsday mode. Like, there's never enough cash in the bank to get them through. And what is like, I think obviously we'll start with the 5 numbers that we talked about at the beginning. But do you have any other tips to help anybody like struggling to stay afloat to sort of get to the next phase where they can start to feel more comfortable?
Yes, 100%. And I've got 3 or 4 clients that I'm working with in this sort of mode at the moment. And what you need to do again is work through, well, are you is it a selling problem? Is it that we're not able to sell enough of what we've got? Is it that we're not charging enough? What is the problem there? And again, having your numbers will really help us do that. Is it we're spending too much and therefore there's just never any money left over? And because what we want to do first and foremost is just get you to the point where, as I said, there's 5 profit levers that I go through with all of my clients to go, okay, is it about pricing? Is it we're not selling enough of what we've got? Is it that our expenses are too high? Can we add is there some way that we can add more value to the products and the offers we've already got? So the perceived value goes up and therefore we can charge more. So there's a whole list of things that we can go through to start getting your increased income up, your revenue up, and hopefully in a more profitable way. The other thing too is what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is that firstly, they're not paying themselves a salary, and therefore they just keep adding expenses before they pay themselves a salary. So again, that hurdle that they have, how much they have to be earning to actually get that salary coming themselves. But I use the cascade analogy that whenever I think about a business finance or personal finance, I always think about it like a cascade. So, interconnecting pools of water. And so what I always think of is you've got income coming in, and our first goal is to make sure that we're profitable. So we're pouring more money into our bank account than we're taking out. Does that make sense? If we can do that, then what happens is our business operating account will gradually fill up.
Okay.
And our goal should be to have, let's just say, 1.5 times our operating expenses and 1.5 times our salary sitting in that bank account on the last day of each month. So if we're pouring more in than we're taking out, then gradually that will inch higher, and we'll get to the point where we go, whoa, I've got my 1.5 months worth of expenses in there. Brilliant. Now, anything over and above that, so if I keep pouring more in than I'm taking out, it'll start to overflow. Okay.
Yep.
Our second step then is to go, okay, now what I need to do is fill up my rainy day fund. So all of that excess money, that surplus money, can start to fill up my rainy day fund, because we know that there will be unexpected expenses. If we don't plan for them, we're a little bit foolish because we know they're going to happen. So we should have the money there for it. And you might say, like, the rainy day fund is really just an extension of your business budget, if you like, and say this is the unexpected. Mm. So that might be 1 month's worth of expenses. So you fill that up to 1 month's worth of expenses. Then if you've got debt within the business, then what we want to do after we've got these first two pools full, the water should flow in and then flow out of those two pools now down. Then we start to pay off debt. And the beautiful thing about paying off debt this way is that now that we're paying off debt, we know that this debt isn't going to come back again because we've got our known expenses covered with our operating account, and we've got our unknown expenses covered with the rainy day fund. So anything we pay off our debt will stay off our debt forever. Then the next pull from there is to try and turn your rainy day fund into more of a cash reserve. So this might be gradually build it to 1 month, 2 months, 3 months worth of operating expenses. Now, what this does then is, and this is what most entrepreneurs never, ever do. And because it means slowing down a bit and actually building a foundation. But if we said 1.5 times your operating expenses in your operating account, and let's say 3 times your operating expenses in your cash reserve, what that means then is if you have a couple of months where your income is low and you don't have enough money coming in to cover all your operating expenses, then you can take the money out of your rainy day fund and out of your cash reserve and top that account back up. And so what it means is that you have no more of this feast or famine cycle, no more of the fluctuations, because you've actually got some reserves there to make sure you can keep paying yourself your salary and you can keep paying yourself your operating expenses. And what this means, and so a lot of entrepreneurs will look at their bank account and go, I've got money in there, but I don't know if I can afford to take any money out. Maybe I'm going to need it. And it's like, well, no. Identify what that number is. That is it. Every month, you can clearly then see, have I got more or less than I need? And then start using that to go flow through the cascade and build your cascade. And once we've got a little bit of a reserve in place, then we can start purposely growing the business. We can go, okay, well, I now want to take on a new staff member. I can see that I've got the cash flow to do that because I've got surplus money every month. I can afford to take on a new staff member. But at that point, once you take on a new staff member, what happens is you go, okay, well, I've now got an extra $3,000 a month, just picking a number here. Mm-hmm. So I need to make sure that what I've got in my operating account goes, because it's 1.5 times my operating expenses, that goes up. And the amount I've got sitting in my reserves also goes up. Yeah. And that way you're building your foundation wider so that your business can go higher. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that's actually the perfect place to close. Phil, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been illuminating in so many ways, and I have thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Fantastic, Maddie. And if you like, I hadn't told you this previously, but I've got a training like a free training that I'm happy just to give to anyone in your audience if you would like. That is just me going through the profit snapshot, like the 5 numbers, and just a spreadsheet. I'll give you a link to the spreadsheet if they want to copy it as well, just so that people can start thinking about what are the 5 things I need to know. And it's really not hard to get those numbers together and then start asking yourself, what is this telling me about my business? What do I need to do to create the financial stability that I really want? Once you got that clarity, suddenly things just start to click. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'll make sure to keep it in the show notes for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening. All the links to connect with Phil are in the show notes, including his free profit snapshot training and spreadsheet. If this conversation helped you rethink your business finances, let me know. Leave a review on your favorite podcast app, share the episode on social media, or send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram at HiMaddieKelly, or you can check me out on my website, mimir.ink, for more info. And you can also join the Mimir community, where you get an inside look into resources and tips the other founders are using to build their businesses smarter, not harder. I will see you guys next week.